Hi, this is Dan Devlin for the Detective Dan Devlin Show, Honorable People, Honorable Nation. Welcome to our show. We hope that you've been watching. Today I had a program scheduled that I'll mention a little bit about that topic, but we're going to focus mainly on the topic of presumption of innocence and the Catholic Church. Here in Western New York, we have a situation within the Catholic Church that needs to be addressed, and we're going to do that in a matter of a couple minutes. But before I do that, we have elections coming up. And our last program, we discussed many of the things that need to be considered in that election. But I want to encourage people who have paid attention to the issues and understand where the candidates are coming from to get out and vote. If you don't understand the issues, do not be twisted and turned by people who just want your vote. They have an agenda that they want to achieve. If you can speak to them and they can let you know what those issues are about, and we would like to think that everyone knows about these issues, but the reality is that that's not the case with everyone. So if you're not up on it, people think it's almost unpatriotic to tell people not to vote. But we can do more harm than good if we don't really know what's going on when these elections are taking place. I want to point out one important thing, and that is that I believe when we look at the two major parties, there's one party that believes in when anyone needs a fish, and I'm referring to the concept of if you give a person a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him how to fish, he can help himself and provide for himself for a lifetime. And I believe the two major parties, and I believe that they're more divided than perhaps ever before. There's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of blaming going on. But people like myself who have studied these issues and care deeply about them, and you recall that this program is called Honorable People, Honorable Nation. It's our objective to try to help us become more honorable people. And that the way that you do that, when we look at that concept of giving someone a fish for the day or teaching him how to fish so he can take care of himself, unfortunately, the Democrat Party is in that camp of giving people a fish one day at a time, making them feel dependent upon that party and those officials who are within that Democrat Party, to make the people dependent upon them. So they have to continually come back to them. They can never be self-sufficient. Whereas the Republican Party, and I think you're seeing it with some of the results that are happening when we look at the economy today. But the Republican Party, to me, seems to follow through with that concept of let's make sure that you can get a decent job. So not only can you provide for yourself, but your family as well. You know, you reach to a level of personal dignity where you understand that you're contributing to society, not simply taking from it all the time. We all have to wrestle with what we want to do. We've also looked at the issue of abortion. When we look at that, and if you've been watching this program, you know that we're deeply concerned about that because these are individuals, in our opinion, and according to the U.S. Constitution, the purpose of the Constitution is to secure the blessings of liberty to our posterity, who are our yet to be born descendants in the womb. And yet we dismiss that and we allow the destruction of these young individuals in the womb. Overwhelmingly, it is the Democrat Party that pushes that agenda. You know, even people, we're going to be talking about the Catholic Church, even people within the Catholic Church who you would think would be opposed to abortion serve as officials, and they go against their core religious beliefs in order to push an agenda that allows the destruction of individuals who God, in our religious belief, has created. You know, this is a very bad idea. We should be, if anything, not punishing those who are innocent. We know that all the people in the womb are innocent individuals. Not punishing them, but hold ourselves accountable for our behavior and correct anything that we're doing that brings about the situation where an abortion might even be considered. So, whereas most of the Republicans, not all by any means, but most of the Republicans are in the corner of preserving our yet-to-be-born descendants and making sure that they're protected. You have your issues that you're going to vote on, but it's important to understand, and my personal opinion is that anyone who is a Christian, certainly, and this probably holds true for other religions as well, if you hold life sacred, when you vote for someone who you know is going to want to continue abortions and make them permissible for people around the country, often people who are, young and don't have a worldly knowledge that would allow them to make a better decision. When you vote for someone from that party, I actually believe that you could be sentencing your soul to hell. Now, that's my personal view. You can do with that what you wish. And I don't use the term warned very much, but in this situation, I'll say that I believe that that's a warning for us, myself included, to make sure that we understand that we are responsible for our behavior. And when we promote bad behavior, if nothing else, God will hold us accountable. So, obviously, even though I'm an independent, I vote with conservatives because I believe they're the party that wants you to succeed and will help you succeed if that's the route you choose. And if you're an individual who only wants to take from society, then chances are you're going to vote for someone in the Democrat Party. I would suggest that you evaluate your behavior and ask yourself, would you want to be treated the way a young individual in the womb is treated? And if you say, no, you wouldn't, then you need to give the Republican Party a chance and look at their concept of helping you by allowing you to succeed, by putting the policies and the procedures in place that allow you to have pride in your own behavior and to become a productive citizen, taking care of your family and your community as well. Now, on to this very, very important issue. The presumption of innocence and the Catholic Church. And I'm going to have to move along because, of course, we have limited time on the show. And there's a lot I have to cover on this. Currently, in the Diocese of Buffalo, and maybe you need to know, I believe that the Catholic Church moved away from me, rather than me moving away from the Catholic Church. And I think we have examples of that when we look at the molestations that have not only occurred within members of the clergy in the Catholic Church, But the efforts to cover up that behavior, transfer priests from one place to another, knowing that they are apt to continue that behavior, and in some cases, even when we know that it's continued, to only transfer that individual to another location. It's irresponsible behavior in my view. Currently, I've spoken out on this, by the way. Currently, we have a bishop, Bishop Malone, here in the Buffalo Diocese. And politicians and many civic leaders in the church, have called for him to release the names of all priests who were accused of any misbehavior in regard to anything that could possibly be perceived as improper behavior, mostly involving young children. Now, this is a topic that if you would ever try to defend someone who is involved in that behavior, most everyone would just jump on you and attack you figuratively and sometimes literally, because you would try to bring some sanity to what is happening in the situations that are going on now. I know, and it's important to understand, you can have people with great intentions on opposite sides of an issue. Oftentimes that happens when the one side reinforces its opinions and does not look at the views from the other side. Those of you who know that I've spoken about the painting that I did and gave to all the people in the world in, I believe it was 1989, is titled Humanity's Torch. And it actually deals with us trying to see things from our opponent's point of view and being able to solve the problem by doing that, rather than facing off with weapons of different types, whether it's in the court of law or whether it's a physical weapon like a firearm. When we genuinely try to see things from another point of view, we do what I think is morally and should be legally our objective. And what happens is, even in a court of law, many times you have a prosecutor who is only interested in convicting that person. And oftentimes we have seen where that leads to them withholding information that would exonerate or show that this individual may not actually be the person who committed the crime. So I suppose that the term might be overzealous. The person is overly concerned about achieving one goal that he won't open his eyes. That's what Humanity's Torch is about. You can look at Humanity's Torch by going to FundamentalHumanRights.Org and clicking in the sidebar, looking at Humanity's Torch. Look at it. Hopefully it will be interesting to you. But it applies in this case as well. Because what we have, and realize I know many of the people who are players, if you will, that's probably not a good term under these circumstances, but I've used it, who are involved in this debate and the call for certain action. And people might be surprised that I'm going to take this position that I'm taking, and they might feel as though I'm defending people who should not be defended. But you need to hear this information because I know that you want to make the best decision possible. And we are a community, and we do have a say, and we not only have a right to speak up, but we also have a responsibility. And I would say to some of those public officials that depending upon the information you have, and I will grant that the Catholic Church in general and this area of the country undoubtedly appears to have covered up many of the things that have been going on. It's wrong if priests have been involved in not just bad behavior, but illegal behavior. Certainly the harming, the great harming of innocent young people, they need to be held criminally accountable. However, I would ask the audience out there, is there any one of you who would think that it's a good idea that if someone accuses you of something, whether it's stealing something that you know that you didn't steal, whether it's speaking poorly of someone, whether it is an actual crime of rape or molestation, and there is nothing but an individual's word to say that it occurred, do you think that it would be responsible behavior for your employer or your church, or your governmental agency to come out and release your name when they have nothing but someone's statement that you did certain acts? Now, I hope that you think about this in a little while, but we can't take the time for you to do it too much now. But I'm willing to bet virtually everyone would say you wouldn't want that to happen to you. And what are we doing here? We are calling for the bishop to release the names of individuals, all the names of any individual involved in the church, especially the clergy, who have been accused of something. You know that in order to have an honorable nation, we have to have honorable people. Are there any people who could call themselves honorable that would allow something that may only be a rumor or an intentional lie to ruin an individual's life work? They've lived their lives to achieve much good, and even the individuals who have confessed and are guilty have admitted that they've done these things. There is much good that they have done also. I'm not trying to dismiss what they did, and I do believe that they need to be held accountable. I've said that. However, when these things happen, many of you know a major portion of my background is in law enforcement. You've heard me talk about individuals convincing law enforcement agencies, or trying to do so, and convincing many of the officers that they had actually been raped, showing physical evidence of being beaten, clothes torn, only to then explain why she lied and to try to justify her bad behavior that would have put an innocent man in prison for 5, 10, 15 years. There are many reasons that people might make an accusation against, in this case, we'll say a priest. And some of those are mere vanity. When people are the victim, and we're at a mindset where we're a victim-prone nation. If I can get someone to feel sorry for me, if I can get the attention from others, that might be the sole motivation for me doing something. However, now we have a situation, and it's not unusual that when cases like this come about, there's a building on. Those who never spoke up before, all of a sudden they're coming forward, and there are significant numbers of people doing so. Oftentimes they're trying to say that something happened to them when they were very, very young. When this happens, it would be dishonorable for us to dismiss the possibility that they might have other motives. And with this situation, the motive of dollars alone, to know that you could go ahead and you could falsely accuse someone and walk away with 10, 15, 20, $50,000, $100,000, and lawyers know that they could get 3% of that. And so there's an incentive for people to say these things happen. We are now in a society where we persecute, and that's probably the right word, those who would dispute claims of individuals who are either a child or even a female. We've seen that in the Kavanaugh hearings recently. No investigator would deal with Ms. Ford the way that they questioned her in those hearings. But because the questioners would be perceived as being evil if they challenged what she said, they're limited. The same thing holds true for when you're dealing with children. But an honorable society would want the truth. And we normally go by the procedure of it is better to allow a guilty man to go free than to condemn or sentence an innocent man who was guilty of nothing. And here's my concern. Here's what we need to do. And any reasonable person would agree with this, is that experienced investigators, law enforcement officers, who understand how people behave, how they try to conceal the truth, and how they can see evidence of the actual behavior. Give them the information on all the people who have been accused and allow them to do their investigation. And when they come through with a list of people who they believe they have evidence in order to show that those individuals had actually done those things, then release that list. And here's why I think that that is important. Many of us were raised with tremendous people of religion as inspirations for us. And because we have some sense of loyalty. We have a love for many of those individuals. And yet some of us are being told that because someone says this seemed like inappropriate behavior, we're to make sure that they're punished. Seeming like there might be inappropriate behavior is different than being guilty of something. Many of the things that we do in life can be misconstrued by someone who is an onlooker. They don't have all the facts. They don't know what we're dealing with. They don't know the emotions of the people who are involved. And I would say that it's a very delicate thing to be a person of faith who's trying to help people who are having problems and not be in the position where you're very vulnerable because they can even misconstrue what you're doing. You could easily put your arm around someone trying to comfort them, and years ago that was never a problem. Try to do that if you're a member of the Boy Scouts now and you're a leader trying to comfort some young boy who just lost his father. People would say, oh, you can't do that. We can't even show compassion anymore. You should know that I'm all for prosecuting those who we have the evidence on. But to jump to conclusions, and I would suggest that that's where we have now become individuals who have a mob mentality, who want to string somebody up, hang someone because they have some association with someone who might have done something wrong. Bishop Malone has a responsibility to all the parishioners, certainly the children, but he also has a responsibility to those priests not to put their name out, to make them suspect, to make people feel as though their children can't be around them, to make them feel as though they've been betrayed, to make them walk away from their religion based upon someone saying that something occurred, especially if it's not of real significance. If you're claiming that you are physically raped or seriously molested, that needs to be investigated. But do that before you start painting everyone with the same brush simply because he was named or someone indicated that I think this behavior was inappropriate. Honorable people treat people the way they want to be treated. And calling for Bishop Malone's resignation somewhat allows him off the hook, because then he can turn things over to everyone else and let them clean up the mess. And we will always have suspicions about the bishop. I hope that you'll look at it and understand, can other people be involved? Especially law enforcement agencies need to be involved, and they need to be involved in a major way now. But give a little bit of time here for this to be done properly, rather than to conduct ourselves in a way that we've eliminated the possibility that there's this presumption of innocence. And that goes for all the parties involved. And I know the young lady who, testified or spoke to this issue, she seems like a great gal and probably has the best intentions possible. But if she's listening to someone on the telephone, which she said that she had, and they have a tremendously heartbreaking story, it's easy to fall into that pattern of believing that it's so. But if you're an experienced investigator, we could tell you how people are so believable, only to find out then that they were lying all the way. And this is not to call everyone a liar. It's just only to suggest that that is a possibility and allow the process to develop and work itself out. God bless you all. I hope you all have a nice day. This is an important issue. Let's not be rash in our judgment and give it the time that it needs. I hope you all have a nice day. I hope you'll go out and vote on Tuesday.